Recently, Kate Arnay's granddaughter of Lucille Ball caused a sensation when she revealed part of her grandmother's old diary on the family website. Everyone thought it would simply contain reflections on a glorious career, but the truth left the public in shock. In her diary, Lucille mercilessly described several famous stars as nothing more than devils disguised as angels. Some saw themselves as inherently superior, openly displaying racism and mocking the weak. Others betrayed their own husbands to seize vast fortunes. Still, others forced young actors into dark, degrading acts in order to manipulate their careers. So which stars did Lucille Ball call out so directly in her diary? And, more importantly, did they ever pay the price for the sins they committed? 1. Joan Crawford abusing adopted children, undermining colleagues, and hiding behind charity. In 1925, when she was barely in her 20s, Joan Crawford was swept into a scandal that shook Hollywood. According to journalist Adela Rogers St. John's, who recalled the case in a 1933 article, an indecent film featuring a young Crawford had been leaked within film circles. MGM quickly used its power to bury the story, but the whispers spread across Beverly Hills' glittering parties. It became one of the secrets Crawford always feared would resurface, and perhaps the reason. She grew so harsh toward the younger generation to instill fear, so no one dared touch her past. As Crawford rose to stardom, she began using her power to force young actresses into submission. At MGM, in the late 1930s, rumors swirled that she manipulated newcomers into shady off-screen projects for her own gain and that of her allies. One of the most famous victims was Anita Page, a rising star adored by audiences. According to Hedda Hopper in the Los Angeles Times, 1939, Anita's career was cut short in just one season, and many believed Crawford was behind it. 2 decades later, in 1971, Lucille Ball saw Crawford's true nature firsthand when she invited her on to Here's Lucy. On camera, Crawford radiated elegance with poised smiles and clever replies. But moments later, when a young assistant brought her a dress with a few wrinkles, Crawford exploded. She screamed so ferociously that the studio fell silent, and the terrified girl quit the entertainment industry altogether. For Ball, that moment proved that Crawford's charm was nothing but a mask. Off-screen, Crawford often attended high-profile charity galas in New York and Chicago, posing with oversized donation checks under the flash of cameras. But whispers in the press suggested much of the money circled back into her own pockets. Journalist Dorothy Kilgallen hinted on CBS Radio in 1957 that some acts of charity are nothing but a veil over the emptiness inside the star. Though never officially accused, Crawford's fairy godmother image always cast a shadow of suspicion. The biggest blow came in 1978 when her adopted daughter Christina published the memoir Mommy Dearest. The book described beatings, ruthless control, and childhood torment in Crawford's mansion. America was stunned. The New York Times called it a shock that stripped Hollywood's queen bare. Even her Oscar for Mildred Pierce, 1945, was tainted with controversy. Colleagues whispered that Crawford had spent heavily to lobby Academy voters, even pressuring industry magazines. One anonymous director told Variety that on that awards night, it wasn't Mildred Pierce that won, it was money and power. To the public, Joan Crawford remained a Hollywood icon. But through Lucille Ball's words and countless testimonies, she emerged as a manipulator, cruel to the weak and skilled at wrapping herself in false virtue. As Crawford's darker side surfaced, Hollywood soon confronted another equally infamous figure, Bette Davis, who wielded her power to crush colleagues and openly opposed the rise of black actors. To Bette Davis, openly boycotting black actors and using power to destroy careers. In May 1966, at the Beverly Hilton Hollywood held a charity gala against poverty. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers packed with hundreds of celebrities. When a young African-American waiter accidentally dropped a wine bottle near Bette Davis's table, the air froze. Davis rose coldly, pointed straight at him, and unleashed humiliating slurs. The room fell silent. Guests later told the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner that the waiter quit that very night while Davis sat back down as if nothing had happened. To the public, Davis and Joan Crawford were locked in the feud of the century. But Lucille Ball saw deeper. Ball once told colleagues that Davis's cruelty didn't stop at equals. She preyed on those unable to fight back, especially young actresses or crew members. One anonymous actress from the 1940s recalled in her memoir that Davis once said in front of a Warner Brothers producer, "That kid doesn't deserve to share the stage with me." The next day, her contract was terminated. The most controversial of all was Davis's attitude toward black actors in the 1940s. According to a Los Angeles Times record 1942, when Warner Bros. Considered casting an African-American actress in a supporting war film role, Davis fiercely objected. She argued that having a colored actor beside her would lower the film's value. Though never splashed on front pages, crew members repeated the story for years as a stain on her career. This later became the reason why, as Hollywood began honoring black performers, critics labeled Davis a relic of the old order. Her politics were equally ruthless. During the Red Scare, she openly supported WAC hearings, In a 1951 New York Daily News interview, Davis declared she would not work with anyone suspected of leftist leanings. Many colleagues saw it as a public threat, and indeed, several young screenwriters who had worked with her suddenly lost contracts. Even her 1939 Oscar for Jezebel drew suspicion. Industry whispers claimed Davis had lobbied aggressively, sending lavish gifts to Academy members and using political connections to pressure voters. Variety hinted that her victory was not just earned on screen, but bargained for behind closed doors. Lucille Ball once told close friends that B. Davis was the perfect example of a star who used power not to uplift, but to destroy. The public saw legend with piercing eyes, but behind Hollywood's curtains, people whispered of a woman willing to sacrifice fairness and dignity to protect her throne. As Davis's truth emerged, Hollywood faced yet another shock. Not harsh words this time, but a star molded by the system, forced into drugs and sham marriages. That star was Judy Garland, Dorothy of The Wizard of Oz, whose angelic voice hid a life of tragedy. Rumors claimed she spent heavily Academy members sending gifts and leveraging political ties. Variety once implied that Judy Garland, forced into addiction, destroying film crews and turning marriage into a public sham, used power not to uplift, but to destroy. The public saw legend with piercing eyes, but behind Hollywood's curtains, people whispered of a woman willing to sacrifice fairness and dignity to protect her throne. As Davis's truth music, molded by the systems and sham marriages, and Dorothy of the Wizard music, of tragedy heavily to lobby gifts and leveraging political ties. Variety once implied that Judy Garland, forced into addiction, destroying film crews and turning marriage into a public sham, used power not to uplift, but to destroy. The public saw legend with piercing eyes, but behind Hollywood's curtain, people whispered of a woman willing to sacrifice fair. In 1962, Lucille Ball witnessed Garland arriving 9 hours late to a Los Angeles shoot. Hundreds of workers had waited since morning. The shoot collapsed. Costs ballooned by the hour. Garland sang enchantingly for half an hour, then abruptly quit, claiming exhaustion. The next day, 3 crew members were fired to balance the losses. Ball later told friends she realized Garland's talent didn't just destroy herself. It dragged innocent lives down to her personal life was no less chaotic. Garland married musician David Rose in 1941, but divorced 3 years later. In 1945, she wed director Vincente Minnelli, father of Liza Minnelli, but they split in 1951 amid rumors their marriage had been arranged by the studio. In 1952, she married Sidney Luft, her manager, as well as husband. It was her longest relationship, but rife with violence and disputes, ending in a loud divorce in 1965. Soon after, Garland wed actor Mark Herron, but it collapsed within 2 years, many calling it a beard marriage. Her final husband, Mickey Deans, was 12 years younger. They married in 1969, just 3 months before Garland died of an overdose in London. Beyond these 5 marriages, Garland had affairs with Frank Sinatra, Orson Welles, and even Marlon Brando. Each fling was a patch over her inner void, never bringing stability. Her children weren't spared. Liza Minnelli often recalled growing up in fear of her mother's rages. Laura Lou, her second daughter, wrote in her memoir that their home was a stage where Judy Garland played a different role every day. In 1950, during the Red Scare, the FBI even flagged Garland due to ties with leftist writers. Studios tightened their grip further, forcing her to maintain a model family image with carefully arranged marriages. On June 22, 1969, Garland was found dead in London at age 47. The New York Times wrote it was the death of a legend and proof of Hollywood's cruelty to its gifted children. Lucille Ball, upon hearing the news, sighed and told friends that talent could never justify destroying both oneself and others. After Garland, Ball's list of demons revealed yet another figure who unsettled Hollywood, Ava Gardner, a screen goddess whose beauty masked scandals of affairs, alcohol, and mafia ties. For Ava Gardner, mafia links drowning in alcohol and publicly humiliating colleagues at MGM's grand 1965 gala at the Beverly